Buhari arrives Istanbul for third Turkey-Africa Partnership Summit. Nigeria partners Benin Republic on food security. Major indices in China and India down more than 1%. Plus, oil heads for flat week as rising cases of Omicron variant fuel uncertainty. This is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us on the business side of life. I will start by telling you that President Muhammadu Buhari is in Istanbul, Turkey, ahead of the third Turkey-Africa Partnership Summit. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the summit is organized by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to deepen relations between the Republic of Turkey and the African continent.
On hand to receive the Nigerian leader on arrival at Istanbul International Airport was a high-powered Turkish government delegation and Nigeria's ambassador to Turkey, Ismaila Yusuf Abba. Also at the airport include Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Defense, Agriculture, Health, FCT, Trade and Investment, the National Security Advisor, and other senior government officials. The Turkey-Africa Partnership Summit, to be held on Saturday, has as a theme enhanced partnership for common development and prosperity. Amongst other things, participants are expected to review the cooperation between African countries and Turkey since the last summit in 2014, as well as provide guidelines and direction for a more win-win situation in the next 5 years.
We're here to share, to be part of development, to be part of prosperity that has prevailed here and is being shared. Nearly 50 African countries have embassies here. So we are intending that there will be intense bilateral discussions between our two countries. We're looking to concretizing partnerships, agreements, and MOUs with regard to matters in education, in investment, in health, in development of our federal capital city. There's a huge Turkish interest in bringing modern hospitals, schools, hotels and conferencing centers and all of that.
The third Turkey-Africa Partnership Summit is coming on the heels of President Erdogan's recent visit to Nigeria, during which several agreements were signed to deepen and expand relations between the two countries.
When he came, Turkish President Erdogan had shown a lot of interest in getting to support Nigeria in dealing with insurgency and banditry and the situation of insecurity in which we have found ourselves. Now, don't forget that Turkey has suddenly emerged as a significant military power all over the world. Look at their intervention in Azerbaijan against Armenia. Turkey has done a lot in ending the ISIL, menace of Libya, of Iraq and Syria. As a matter of fact, the relative stability that is today present in Libya is owed to Turkey. So they have shown interest. And I don't want to say how much or how far this will go. But in the President's delegation, we have our Minister of Defense, we have the National Security Advisor, we have the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency. We are expecting a lot from this.
The Turkish leader had also affirmed his commitment to increase the volume of trade between Nigeria and Turkey to $5 billion. From Istanbul, Turkey, Adamu Sambo.
Now from Turkey to Benin Republic, where Nigeria and the Benin Republic have finalized and signed agreement on rice production and supply between the two countries. Under the agreement, the Benin Republic will provide land for Rice Farmers Association for rice cultivation, and Nigeria, on the other hand, will process the rice for markets in both countries. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development has commended Benin Republic and Nigerian farmers for accepting to key into the rice revolution of the federal government.
We have to produce what we eat. We cannot depend on importing food from other countries to feed ourselves. We cannot export employment while our youth are jobless. Actually, it is not making any sense. So any responsible government must have to sit down and think. And Mr. President, decide to close the door and ban importation on rice and many other produce.
The effort is to have food security. Our belief is that if Nigeria is successful in attaining food security, they also need to be in that same position so that the whole region will be self-sufficient in rice production.
And the Securities and Exchange Commission is to commence regulatory fee on fixed income secondary market transactions with effect from January 1st, 2022. This was contained in a circular dated December 15, 2021 and signed by the management of SEC. The circular notified capital market operators and stakeholders that the fee structure on secondary market transactions on bonds will take effect from January 1st, 2022, and the secondary market transactions on bonds shall include bond transactions executed on a security exchange. And now to infrastructure. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says the Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria, that is Infraco, set up by the federal government to support critical infrastructure, will raise 14 trillion naira through local and foreign debt markets. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, who disclosed this at the end of 12th Annual Bankers Committee retreat in Lagos, said more than 50% of the fund will be raised to come from local debt markets, adding that the instrument will be mostly in naira. He explained that the corporation will target strategic infrastructure projects to catalyze and strengthen growth. Speaking on key resolutions taken at the retreat, Emefiele said the Bankers Committee, among other things, resolved to position Nigeria's economy for inclusive, sustainable recovery, adding that the committee underscored the importance of collaboration between the fiscal authorities, the central bank, and the banking industry in building the needed resilience for economic growth. Infracorp is expected to set the standard template that will help in enabling greater private sector funding for public infrastructure projects in Nigeria. Deposit money banks borrowing from the Central Bank of Nigeria, known as Standing Lending Facility, SLF, increased by 145.8% in the first half of 2021. A new report by the CBN indicates that the average daily request for SLF was 83.68 billion naira in 109 business days in the first half of 2021, compared to average daily request of 34.05 billion naira in 95 business days in the corresponding period of 2020. The increased patronage in SLF is the reviewed period. Under the reviewed period reflected tight liquidity conditions in the Nigerian banking system. Now to the main business of the day. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that inflation has declined continuously for 8 months. Consumer Price Index CPI, which measures inflation, dropped to 15.4% in November 2021 from 15.99 in October. Statistician General of the Federation, Simon Harris, says this shows that government efforts at improving the economy is yielding results.
The decline continued to the month of November with a figure of 15.40% on year-on-year basis. And so this is an improvement when compared to the corresponding month of October 2020, which recorded a figure of 14.89%. And so looking at this, you discover that between the month of October and the month of November, we have a decreasing percentage of the points of 0.59%.
And joining me to talk more on the latest inflation figures released by the Bureau of Statistics and other developments is in the economy is Professor of Capital Market in Nasarawa State University and President Association of Capital Market Academics of Nigeria, Professor Uche Waleke. Professor, you are welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much, Benny. I'm very delighted to be here.
Well, we are here again faced with new figures talking about inflation. We hear from those figures we have a decline, a continuous decline for the last 8 months. Can we relate to these figures and can we actually feel them on the streets?
Well, let's start by saying that going by the numbers, what we have is cheering 8 months of consecutive decline. That's called disinflation. And it's not as though prices are not rising, but what that number is saying, 15.40, is that yes, if you compare to 15.99 in October, is that prices are rising, but at a declining rate. You know, yes, that's what I mean.
Can you break that, Prof? Prices are rising, but in a declining rate.
Right,
okay.
yes. Of course, you know, Consumer Price Index is what measures inflation. And when we say an index is nothing but a metric that measures, you know, the average change in price over a period of time. Okay, so when we say year on year, on a year-on-year basis, it means compared to the corresponding period, you know, of the previous year. So we have noticed, you know, this decline, you know, since April. So I think, as I said earlier on, yes, to the extent that there's a decline is welcome. And we also notice this decline in both urban and rural inflation, you know, also declined. But the pressure is also beginning to show, and that's when you look at the month-on-month. On a month-on-month basis, inflation rate actually increased by 1.08% compared to 0.98 year-on-year for October. So month-on-month pressure is beginning to mount. And if you also look at the core inflation figure, before the core inflation figure moved from 13.24 in October on a year-on-year basis to 13.85. Okay, so what actually led to the drop in inflation rate we saw in the month of November was more from the food side. You know, it has two components. You have the core, that is the all items minus the volatile agri product, and then the food. So the core actually increased. And when you talk about core, you're talking about non-food, like clothing, like footwear, like household equipment. And we know that these are usually influenced
which a whole number of us are not really much interested in.
No, but you know, they are also impacted by, but these are the things we import. We hardly produce, we import a lot of them. And the high exchange rate is impacting on that. That's why you find core inflation, you know, rising, especially this period of festive season when people tend to, go for them. But you made a point, Benny, and I want to speak to it. The point is, you asked the question whether the people out there, can actually connect, can actually relate
with these
figures. You find people say, I can't really understand. You say the inflation rate is dropping, and yet prices of things are going up. And it actually speaks to the methodology for computing this index. The National Bureau of Statistics says that it gets this price information from 10,540 informants, spread across the country. And it also says that the information is with respect to 740 goods and services in the basket. Okay, so what usually happens is that they tend to compare the current current commodity price with a base years with a base period's price. So from November, you're comparing November and November of the
2020,
the previous year. Yeah. So what you now find is that because there is a base, you must compare with a base. Okay, what we call the base effect usually affects the outcome. So the reduction in inflation rate we have in November was also partly explained, or you can also partly explain it by the base effect, because throughout 2020, inflation rate was on the rise. In October 2020, it was 14.23. In November, it went up to 14.89. So the base, increased.
Okay,
because,
Prof, can we talk outside the base now to say what is happening to food prices? It's a usual thing that during festive periods like that, the demand for food items is higher. Should that affect the prices outside the base now?
Yes, of course. The more you have this mismatch between demand and supply, or you tend to find that prices go up. But the point I was making, Benny, it's important I finish it.
Yes.
Is that you see the issue of whether you can relate to it. I say it has to do with the methodology. Okay, if you say that between last year and this year, for example, that the average price movement has been 15.4%, you now ask yourself, if you look at the price of Gary, if Gary used to be 300 a mudu, for example, 300 naira last year, and this year is about 600 naira, that's 100% movement. If you take noodle, Indomie noodle that maybe a pack that used to be 4,000, today is about today is about 6,000. That's 50% movement. So you can think of pick some of these items that are commonly consumed. You hardly find one that you can say that the movement over 1 year period has been just 15.4%. Okay,
it's been higher.
Yes, on the average. So you can hardly find that.
From 50 to 100.
Yeah,
That's about the percentage.
Yeah, some of them are usually higher than 50. That's the point I'm making, on the average. So that speaks to the methodology, and that's why I think that the MBS should maybe take a second look at the methodology, that is being used, because of course it also involves attaching weights attached to some of these commodities, to reflect their importance. So I think methodology should be revised to reflect, so that these things can reflect reality, and that's why you find that some independent,
data collectors.
Beautiful. They tend to give, turn out figures that are way higher than what the MBS, brings out. So it's important we look at methodology. But I think for the month of November, the base effect plays a role, played a role, and also the fact that we are entering harvest. This is harvest season, so we expect the harvest season too must have rubbed off positively on output, such that we had that decelerating, inflation.
Okay, now away from food prices, looking at the present borrowing plan, will it be affecting prices of commodities anytime soon, or it has no relationship with that?
Of course it does, especially when the borrowing is domestic. If you do more of domestic borrowing, what happens is that interest rates are driven up because you are crowding out the private sector. When you borrow, okay, interest rates tend to go up, and if interest rates go up, of course it fits into the cost of production. Manufacturers, for example, can't access funds cheap, and you tend to see prices also rising because interest rates are going up. So yes, it has a serious connection with the fact that fiscal deficits are widening and government is borrowing. And as I said, that is more when it is domestic borrowing.
Thank you so very much, Professor Uche Owaleke, for sharing your thoughts with us at this particular point in time, and for the suggestions you've given to NBS. The methodology needs to be reviewed so that the man on the street will get to relate to these figures as they are being churned out from time to time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Benny.
Well, moving on, ahead of the Christmas festivity, the price of grains in the open market increased week on week as buy pressure weigh on existing supply, just like the professor just said moments ago. But let's take a look at the prices of commodities in the market. And now to transaction in the capital markets. Stocks advanced Friday to reverse losses recorded in Thursday's session. At the end of the day, the all-share index rose by 0.2% to 42,353.31 basis points. 341 million shares traded in 3,059 deals, valued at 3.535 billion naira. Equity capitalization settled at 22.107 trillion naira, while volume of trade was dominated by international breweries, the UACN, and the First Bank of Nigeria Holdings. Global stock market review is next with Nneka Oko.
Hello and welcome to the global market segment. Central banks globally are prioritizing the fight against elevated inflation by tightening monetary settings while also keeping a wary eye on the impact of Omicron. Meanwhile, global stocks extended declines on Friday amid a drop in global technology shares. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei 225 led declines with a 1.79% drop at 28,545.68. The Shanghai Composite also tumbled, falling 1.16%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dropped 1.2%. U.S. stock indices were also in negative territory in early trading. The Dow Jones Industrial Average depreciated by 61 points, S&P 500 dropped 0.43%, while Nasdaq 100 slipped 1.01%. In Europe, markets were slightly lower as concerns persisted about the spread of the Omicron COVID-19 variant and the inflation outlook. Germany's DAX fell 0.59%, London's FTSE topped 0.06%, while CAC 40 of France also declined 0.74%. For African markets, it was mixed trading in early deals as concerns about economic risk from the fast-spreading Omicron virus variant sapped sentiment. Tunisia's Tunidex fell along with Ghana's GSE Composite, while South Africa, Kenya, and Namibia were all in green. And that's global markets. I'm Nneka Oko.
Now let's take a look on how the Naira is changing for other currencies. Well, this is a wrap on the program Business Express for the week. Join us next week for another fresh edition. We value your feedback, so keep the observations and suggestions coming. And also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel.